Welcome to Leadership Beyond the Title podcast, where we redefine what it really means to lead. I'm your host, TaSheena Braxton, executive leadership and team coach, systems thinker, and champion for equity-driven leadership. This isn't your typical leadership podcast. Here, we go beyond job titles and performance metrics to explore how leadership shows up in the everyday, through relationships, values, decision-making, and the way we build systems that work for everyone. You'll hear real stories, unfiltered truths, and powerful insights that challenge the status quo. Because the world doesn't need more traditional leaders, it needs braver ones. So, let's dive in. Hey, welcome back to Leadership Beyond the Title. I am so excited to be back after a full summer of kids. If you are a mom, if you're a parent, even if you are a auntie, grandparent, whatever it is, you know how much it is to just be with the kids all summer long. And I am preparing for one of the biggest transitions of my life and my daughter's life, which is she is going away to college. At the time of the publishing of this episode, it's about 4 or 5 days before she leaves. And even this morning, we took her boyfriend to the airport. Well, we didn't take him, but we met up with him and his family at the airport because he's also going away to school. And so it is just a big transition right now in our lives. And I am just embracing this newness, this change, this new part of my identity that is different than what it used to be. And so I wanted to come today because I wanted to get into a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I have been working with tons of teams this summer as well. And one of the things that I keep hearing from many different teams that they talk about is they need to get better with decision making. And what happens is they're saying that decisions aren't being made fast enough, well enough, without all the information, or there's a lot of bottlenecks to getting the decisions or who's making the decisions. And their request is, give me a decision-making framework. We need to create something. We need to figure out how to do this thing because we are drowning in just a ton of stuff that is hard to break through, and the decision making framework is going to solve for that. And I get it. I get that you want a decision making framework because we have been taught in this Western society that if you write things down, if there's a step by step process, that becomes Bible, that becomes gold, and it's easier for you to just like move through it. It's easier for you to be able to say, this is how it's going to be. Well, my friend, I am here to tell you today that you don't need another freaking decision making framework. What you need to focus on is what is at the root of that. What is that is causing or preventing you, your teams, your leaders from making the best decisions that they can make? And you know what that is? What I've found out, what I've investigated, and what I've, come to a conclusion on? It's not a structure issue. It's not a framework issue. It's an identity issue. Because, when you are trying to fix the culture, the standards, the procedures with a chart, with a template, with some type of like step by step process, that actually really doesn't work. Because if there's something in my identity that says that I cannot relinquish decision making authority, or it has to be perfect, or we have to make sure that we have all of we've went through all the scenarios before a decision is made, it has something to do with my identity, not the fact that there are people around me that I can't trust or that I feel like I cannot give decision making to. Decision making is not about roles or processes. What it is like, if you really think about it and you really just start to reflect, you'll see that decision making is really about power and safety. And it's about whether the people in the room actually feel like they can lead, or if they have to ask for permission every step of the way. So do I have the power in order to make the decision? If I make the decision, am I safe? If it's wrong, if it doesn't go well, Do I have the power to be seen as an not authoritarian figure, but do I have the authority to make these decisions? And when I make the decisions, do people follow them, right? There's all these different things. But compounded with those kind of questions that people have in their mind is race, gender, seniority, and personality type. So, of course, if you are a person who is black or brown, a lot of the times people are not following your decisions, or you're just not being given or extended the opportunity to make a decision. Then you have gender. Females are typically not, rising up to the level of the C suite or to be part of those director roles. And so they are not getting the opportunity to make decisions. Then you have even like sexual preference, so LGBTQ. Like, you just look around in certain industries and you're not going to see a lot of people from the LGBTQ background or community being the decision makers. Seniority, we typically go for the people that are the like been around for a long time and they've seen a lot of things, and so they get the decision making. But if you're a newbie, you're not going to get decision making. And something else that I have also seen that has played a role in whether or not a person gets decision making authority is, and you have maybe a type 8 who is like, let's get it done, let's go, 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 go. And because they're getting their work done so well, maybe, that's subjective. But if they're getting their work done, then yeah, like that personality type can definitely, make decisions because they're going to keep the train moving. And whether or not we like to admit it or not, all of these things are biases that we hold in ourselves. And it's a part of individuals' identity. It's a part of who they are, what they've learned in life, how they've been shaped in society that make us, judge and make us feel like this type of person can make decisions or this person can't make decisions. And so our ego, our identity, it gets hurt when decision making is not done well, and vice versa. Even if we're not the decision maker and someone else is supposed to make the decision, there's still a lot of judgment, there's still a lot of perceptions, there's still a lot of like bias that is happening on whether or not that person can make a well-rounded decision. So I want to talk to you today and just to let you know that it's not necessarily a team problem, or it's not necessarily like, we need to put these processes in place. Although a process it does work, right? And it works when you focus on the thing that really is the problem or really is the issue, which is the power or the identity or the ego. Like, we have to work through that in order for you to be able to follow this process. Because if you think about it, I can give you a framework, a process all day long. But if you feel like it is going to be something that is going to be a hit on your ego, your personality, your, well-being, your safety, then you may not follow that. You will come up with excuses on why it won't work. You will make your own rules. You will say, like, yeah, it's good for that, but not for this situation. There's a bunch of different things. So, framework is not going to fix it if you don't address the root. Let me tell you about a team that I coached recently. So, they are a cross functional team. And of course, they have a structure, they have roles, they know who they report to. They had everything that made sense on paper. Like, this person needs to do this, or this team needs to do this before it's passed over to this team, and so on and so forth. And yet, every time they had to make a decision, it just felt like it kept circling, and like they were reopening conversations, they were repeating themselves, they were backtracking, they were asking for more, like, we need more alignment. And when you're asking for more when it comes to decision making, I just want you to note that, like, the more is coming from a scarcity mindset. Like, I need more to feel safe. And so I just want you to put a pin in that, and I want you to recognize, like, when there's decisions that need to be made and someone is asking for more information, more time, you know that it's coming from a scarcity place, and maybe you need to ask about that. Because in a world where there's a lot of agility, flexibility, things are moving quicker and faster, we have to kind of be light on our toes, light on our feet, and we have to be able to make decisions quickly, because if we don't, we get stuck and we get left behind. And so asking for more and more and more without wanting to experiment or try different things will actually hold you back. Okay. So I just wanted to kind of pin that, because the asking for more is a sign of there's something going on with my identity, that I need to have it perfect, that I need to make sure that I'm not going to be judged, or I'm not going to be discounted, or I'm not going to be told no. So you just need to make sure that you ask that. But this particular team, these people were tired. They were burnt out. They were exhausted, because it felt like they were repeating work over and over again, because they couldn't get decisions to go through. And so, in this particular meeting that we were in, after several sessions, I finally asked them, because when we were talking about different things, it felt like we were getting to a level of like, okay, so this is how we're going to do this decision making process. And of course, as a coach, I'm learning as long right along with the people that I'm coaching too, right? Which is nothing wrong, but the way I'm learning is not how to use tools and processes. I'm learning about the team, right? And one of the things that was clear to me about this team was that they kept like repeating the different things over and over again. And once they got a decision making framework, they would say, oh, but our senior leaders are not going to go along with this. Oh, but we need to pull our senior leaders in. Or, oh, the senior leaders are not going to accept this. They're going to tell us no, it's no use of us even doing that. And so it kept coming back to this identity of a team. Now, there is an individual identity and there is a team identity as well. And so I paused and I just asked a simple question to this team. And I said, well, what happens when someone makes a decision and it goes wrong? And this group was silent at first for a quick second, but then they came and they was like, well, if it's wrong, then I won't be able to make a decision again. If it's wrong, they will tell me I need to start over. If it's wrong, they'll take over and they'll just do it themselves. And then I don't look like the leader anymore. So all of these things came back to, what level of power do I believe I have, or do I believe my team has, if I make the wrong decision? And as you can see, that is a clear sign of identity, right? But then, it also is like something that they were talking about too, was like, it depends on who makes the decision, right? So if this is a white male, typically in most environments, their perspectives, their decision making authority is taken as like, yes, this is right, let's do it, right? But if it's coming from a black woman, or even a Asian or a brown woman, typically there's a lot of questions, right? Not because I don't think you can do the job, because that's why you were hired. You have some level of credibility and expertise, but because I have to make sure that I'm safe, because I've been taught in this society that you don't know what you're talking about. And again, goes back to identity. And it's so this is something that we really need to kind of dive into and discover and really think about when we're talking about decision making, and we're like trying to stand up a decision making framework, because that is not always the solve for a lot of these different things. Okay. So I believe that when you start to look at your identity, there's another element that comes in, and that is trust. Trusting in yourself, trusting in your ability, and then trusting your teammates who are close to the work, who are making these decisions, right? And so the reason why it's hard for us to trust others is because we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust ourselves that we are not going to kind of like shame ourselves when the person who reports into us gets it wrong, when the person who reports into to us experiments and it's not right the first time. We don't trust ourselves to take it and be able to say it's good, it's all gravy, as we used to say, and I can move through this and it's okay, and we're learning, right? Because we frame every mistake as a failure, or rather we don't frame it as a learning opportunity, or the way we learned about something. When we know we're learning intuitively, we know we learn we can't do a certain thing, like a child when they first start walking, or a child when they try to touch the stove or something hot or whatever, they intuitively know I can't touch that again, right? The thing is, we have to be more explicit that this was an opportunity for learning and you learned something. What did you learn, right? Because that is going to help you to start to trust your teammates, trust yourself. It's going to start to help you to see like all the world is an experiment and it's a learning process, and we have to go through this to get to the other side, but it's okay. It gives you the courage to say like this is okay when you see everything as learning, when you set the framing that this is all about learning, right? And when you are working with a team and you are ready to deal with the deeper dynamics of what's happening, like who's allowed to lead, who gets cut off, who gets their ideas repackaged and presented by someone else, then you are not just putting a band-aid on a system that needs healing, because these type of systems need the support, the healing. It needs the understanding and the awareness to see how these deeply embedded biases and perspectives and opinions are stopping us from making the right decisions that we need to make. And it's not up to your job to like build up your identity or to make you feel better about yourself or to build your self esteem. However, your job should be fostering a sense of your belonging, about your need to, or they want you to be there, they want you to participate. They should be fostering that. And it can be easily fit, you can easily break that trust when you're not allowed to lead, you get cut off every time, or someone here's your idea and then they take it and they repackage it in some type of way. Okay. And I'm not saying all this to be dramatic. I'm just saying this because I actually want your team to move faster. I want the processes to be smoother. I don't want you in meetings after meetings after meetings. I don't want there to be a lot of friction and conflict that's happening because there's somebody's ego who is in the way, and they're like, this cannot happen because I feel a certain type of way when so and so makes a decision, or I feel a certain type of way when I can't make the decision. It takes you working with your team and having these real conversations, right? I want to see teams that have a conversation about power. Like, how phenomenal is it that I can sit down with you and I can say, you know what? There's power dynamics in the room, right? And these power dynamics are sometimes so unintentional, because what I see is people don't realize the power that they have just by looking at an org chart. Whoever's at the top, they're in charge, right? Just a visual of an organizational chart will show power dynamics, and that can make everybody feel a certain way. Then there's, like, do we have trust? The minute that I talk behind your back and not to you, I have ruined the trust, because now I don't know if I can work with you. And then, are we going to have the real conversation about equity here? Right? Because just because I'm a new person doesn't mean that I can't offer something to the conversation just as good, if not better, than that person who has been in this role for umpteen years. Okay. So I don't want you to first focus on a framework or try to make your decisions by like, let's build out a chart. Let's say this person does this, the RACI model. I have so much bias towards the RACI model. I just have to really tell y'all, because it's like responsible, accountable. I can't even think of what the others are. Y'all know it, but I can't think of it right now. But it's like, okay, so if we do that, and then what? Like, we're going to follow that practice, but like, I don't understand what this means. I don't understand how to keep this moving. Like, this person is accountable. Does that mean everybody else is not accountable? Like, it's just to all of y'all who use it, great. If it works for you, it works for you. I just believe that frameworks for decision making, frameworks for certain things, without the level of dealing with the power, the identity, the ego, the trust, the equity, will not work. Okay, so here are a couple of things that I think you should do before you start to work on like another framework for your team. The first thing is I want you to start to audit and start to become aware of what assumptions your team has, okay? So sometimes like there's like the underlying rules that nobody really talks about but everybody knows about. You know those things, right? And it's like, who do you expect to make decisions? Is it the person at the top of the org chart? But they're not even closest to the work, but we just say they got to make the decisions because they're at the top, right? No, the person closest to the work should be able to do that, right? Or who gets more questions than other people? Like, do they have to go before the senior leaders to present their idea before they can execute on their idea, before they can share their idea and grab a team or create a team for their idea? Like, who gets all the questions, right? You see the people who never could get their idea through, that will tell you everything, right? That will tell you everything you need to know about the views of different people in your organization. It's also a good kind of like litmus test for how much bias and inequity is in your system meaning in your organization. And so you just want to make sure that you're really kind of like exploring and investigating, like, what assumptions do we have around decision making? Who gets to make the decisions? How often do people get to make the decisions? Who gets questioned to make decisions? How long does it take for a decision to get through? Like, I want you to really like investigate that. The second thing is like, is it a safe, psychologically safe space, right? So what I mean by this is like, when there's a level of disagreement, or someone doesn't like an idea, is it punished or is it kind of worked through? Is it more explored, or do we just shut it down right away and say, you know what, nope, you shouldn't have made that decision, that's not good, now we can't move on, they yada yada yada, like all these different things. And so I want you to think about that, and I want you to really discover, like, what is it when a disagreement happens, when a failure happens? Do you get punished or do you get rewarded because you're learning? And is feedback given fairly, or is it given selectively? I know a lot of Black women that I know do not get the feedback that they need in order to make decisions and move forward. Now, I did say decisions, but what I mean is like, they don't have feedback that they can execute on and actually change or shift behaviors. And so they are kind of lost, and they're like, I don't know what to do because my boss is just saying, yeah, you're good, you're fine, it's okay. But then they never really get an opportunity to like really hone in on what do they need to do. And then review time comes around, they're like giving this list of things that they should do, and they're like, oh my God, you should have told me throughout the year. I've been asking for feedback, right? But we know white men and other groups often get feedback that they can use to make them better and to grow their careers. Okay. So look for the psychological safety. That's the second one. And then the third one is like, what does success actually look like? Okay. Because if everybody is operating from a different standpoint of what a good decision is, you're always going to have a conflict, right? And that conflict is going to look personal because our identity is attached to those decisions. But it might be a structural issue, and it's definitely an identity or ego issue, right? And so like, what is a good decision? Like, is a good decision these 3 points? Like, you're investigating these 3 points. Is a good decision like you included a certain amount of people? I talked about quorums because there's this whole thing about the Texas quorum, and they left. And I talked about how the concept of a quorum is such a good concept for teams when they have to go to meetings and they have to make decisions. And so, like, what is that for you? Does that qualify as a good decision when there's a quorum of people who actually collectively give insights and contribute to it? What is a good decision? Okay. So, audit whatever assumptions you have about decisions, check for whether or not there's psychological safety, and then define what success looks like for decisions. Okay. So I know that this was a lot. I know that you are probably like, oh my God, we need to just burn all this stuff down. We need to just burn it down. We need to start all over. That just means you're listening. That just means that you're paying attention. You've listened to this and you're like, oh, that kind of, that's something to think about. right? You don't need to burn it all down. I'm not going to tell you to burn it all down and get rid of everything. You just need to look at decision making within a new lens, and you need to add someone who can actually say what's going on and not be afraid to say what's going on, okay? And that's what I do for teams. This is what I do for teams because I understand that when you are too much in the work, it's harder to like take a laser, like it's harder to get on the balcony. If you've heard the balcony and dance floor concept, the concept of the balcony is like you're looking down and you're looking from a systems thinking perspective, and then the dance floor is like you're in the system and you're moving but you can't really see. It's almost like the the elephant and the bird analogy where like you only see the level at which you're at. And so it can be hard to point out what's going wrong, right? And so this is where team coaching comes in because you don't want to be surface level. You don't want to feel like something is going to be used against you because, especially if you're in a system where decisions and moving forward on work is kind of like punished, you definitely want a neutral party, somebody who can really look at this in a different way, okay? And so if this is something you want to do, for sure, book a consult call with me with the links in my show notes because I would love to work with your team or with you as the leader on really trying to figure this thing out, right? Because we're spending way too much time trying to create frameworks, babes. And these frameworks don't even work at the level that they should, right? We're trying to make it work when the tool should work for us, okay? And so you don't need another template. You need some clarity on what you want to do. You need to bring more of an equitable, more of a fair lens into your work. And I want to help you do that. So the link is in the show notes. And again, thanks for listening to Leadership Beyond the Title. And before I leave in this new season of my show, I want to leave you with this question. What does leading beyond the title look like for you? Think about that. Share it on the show notes. Share it on my social media channels. I would love to know, what does leading beyond the title look like for you? Talk to you soon. Bye. Thanks for listening to Leadership Beyond the Title podcast. If today's episode moved you, sparked a new idea, or challenged your perspective, share with a friend and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. But before you go, take a moment to reflect. What does leadership beyond the title mean to you? How are you already living it? And where might you lean in just a little bit more? And if you're ready to step into leadership that's rooted in your values, amplifies your voice, and positions you as the go-to leader in your field, check the show notes to learn how we can work together. Keep showing up, keep leading, just as you are, with Leadership Beyond the Title.